For full-length audio, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcast. And on YouTube, please consider liking and subscribing for new content every week. And now, on to the video.
Here's this army, throw up your hands.
All right, Clanton. You called down the thunder, well, now you got it. You tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
The gunfight at the OK Corral was a 30-second shootout between the Earps, led by Virgil, and members of the Cowboys. And it occurred at about 3 p.m. on Wednesday, October 26th, 1881 in Tombstone. So, Nicole, I know you've probably done quite a bit of research on this one, not just to mention that we have our own personal times that we've been there, but I know you've done a lot of research for this episode. So what'd you find?
Well, a lot of it I knew, but I kind of brought it out to specifics so that to help everyone understand, because we've been there multiple times. And I feel like I really know this story in and out.
Yeah.
But there were some surprising facts that I found that I didn't know, even from being there multiple times. So I'm going to start with Virgil. Okay. So Virgil Earp, he was the Tombstone's town marshal and the deputy U.S. marshal that day. And he had a lot of experience as a sheriff, a constable, marshal, and a soldier in combat. So... highly decorated, okay? Yep. He made a decision to enforce a city ordinance in Tombstone prohibiting carrying weapons in town, and he had made the decision to disarm the Cowboys. Because he had heard they'd come into town,
right?
Were carrying weapons, and, the law was kind of made for them.
Sure.
Specifically, because they were causing a lot of trouble. So they were kind of like doing
profiling.
Like a middle finger,
right.
I'm going to do what I want, so, head lawman's like, oh, no, you're not in my city.
Right.
So he's going to go take care of this, right? Okay. So the gunfight at the OK Corral, there were Virgil, Morgan, Wyatt, Doc Holliday on one side.
Right.
Okay. Those are the lawmen. They'd all been deputized, okay?
Yeah,
for this
folks, if you don't realize this,
incident.
She's using the air quotes, so deputized.
Deputized, okay? Basically, you're not,
right.
You're covered under the law.
Right,
for this little incident.
Yeah.
Especially Doc Holliday.
Yeah,
He was,
right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And before this, Wyatt didn't want to get involved in any, town law, any of the stuff. He just wanted to be a businessman. He wanted to be making money. He was the owner of the Oriental Saloon and billiards table, and he just wanted to make money. So he kind of got pulled into this, but he was a little ticked off too. He had a temper, so he decided to go with him. Okay,
right.
So they strut down the street, and you can tell, in the movie Tombstone, I think they probably portrayed it pretty well as to how it went, because they saw them walking down. Okay. And at the OK Corral, which I'll talk about here in a second, it wasn't exactly at the OK Corral. It was near the OK Corral. Okay. Are the Cowboys, which the Cowboys are the group. When I say cowboy, I'm not saying someone that's herding cattle.
Right.
I mean the specific gang.
Right.
Basically, you got to look at them as a gang. Okay. Billy Claiborne, the brothers Ike and Billy Clanton, and the brothers Tom and Frank McLaury were on the other side of this gunfight. Okay? So, the gunfight did not take place within or next to the OK Corral, which it kind of sat on Allen Street, which is the main drag through Tombstone.
Right.
Which is the one that I think they've paved, but they've thrown dirt back over, so it looks like an Old West town. Okay. And it had a rear entrance lined with horse stalls on Fremont Street, which is the street. What is it? That's right behind it.
Right, it's right behind it. And that's actually what you drive through to go to. Yeah.
Yeah. So the shootout actually took place in a narrow lot on the side of C.S. Fly's photography studio on Fremont Street, which is 6 doors west of the OK Corral's rear entrance.
Okay.
Okay. And we've been there. You can go into the front of the OK Corral, which has a little shop, and you buy the tickets to go, and you can go in the back and see all the old West things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the
There's a lot of
memorabilia, so
stuff.
to speak.
Memorabilia.
Yeah.
And then you can walk back to where the shootout actually happened. And they have figures of people standing where the Clantons and the Earps and everybody where they think they stood.
Right.
And if you've heard about this story, which most probably have, at least in the United States, you always imagine it in like you see in the movies, where they're really far apart
Right.
and they're shooting and going across hay bales and, you know, the whole cinematic experience. It is not like that at all.
No, in fact, it is so close that, I mean, every time we're there, I mean, Nicole's right, we've been there, I can't even enumerate the amount of times, and every time we're there, I say the same thing. How did anybody walk out of here alive?
And, I mean, you walk up and it's like they're right next to each other.
Yeah.
But so members of the parties, like the Earps and then the Clantons and McLaurys, were only about 6 feet apart.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
Okay.
probably being general, or
Yeah.
like generous, rather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So about 30 shots were fired in about 30 seconds. So that's a shot a second,
That's just wild.
6 feet apart.
Yeah. Again, how anybody survived that, I will never know.
Yeah. And it was really close. That's a lot of shots.
Yeah.
So Clanton, Billy Claiborne, and Wes Fuller ran from the fight.
Okay.
Billy Clanton and both McLaury brothers were killed.
Yeah.
Virgil, Morgan, and Doc Holliday were wounded, but Wyatt came out completely unscathed.
It's just amazing. Yeah, and we'll touch on a whole bunch of stuff, but the thing, if you're ever there and you hear about this this mystical man, he was pretty wild. I mean, he when he goes into a vendetta, and we won't really cover that a whole lot in this podcast, maybe at some point, but when we talk about what happens afterwards, basically he hunted the cowboys down. And when he did that, there were many gun battles where he just walked out there like he was nobody's business in the middle of these huge gunfights, shooting out and just shooting like he had a death wish.
Yeah.
And he never was injured. Never once. It's just, anyway, sorry. I kind of veered off a little bit, but the man, you know, look,
That's
there's
why
a lot
people
of,
still talk about
Right.
Wyatt Earp. He's still like a real life movie cowboy.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he was superhero status before there was such a thing.
So to come back to this, yeah, the lawmen were injured, but none of them died in this fight.
Yeah,
But 3 of the cowboy gang were killed.
yeah.
So how do you think that went? Not well.
Yeah. No, it did not.
Okay. So Ike Clanton filed murder charges against the Earps and Doc Holliday after this gunfight.
Yep.
Okay. And after they had a 30-day preliminary hearing and a brief, little sit in jail, basically, they were shown to have acted lawfully. The Earps were in Holliday.
Right.
So they get in trouble for it. Okay. But they got their payback.
Boy, did they ever.
And the one thing that I found when we went to Tombstone, even into the 2000s, because we went there in early 2000s.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time when we really did the full experience of going to the OK Corral and doing all the touristy stuff.
Yeah, probably like 2007, maybe something like that. Yeah.
You get the feeling like the families that live at Tombstone that have been there for generations don't like the Earps.
No, they do not.
In fact, when we went, was it Boot Hill Cemetery?
Yep.
So they sell fudge all over this place, okay? Like every single store
Yeah. It
has
is a fudge factory.
But we happened to be at Boot Hill Cemetery because it's the first thing you hit when you get to Tombstone.
It is,
because it sits north of the town, okay?
Coming from Tucson.
Yeah. So after we'd done the cemetery tour, we'd come out and I wanted fudge. I was hungry.
Of course.
The maker of the fudge, the person that was selling it, told us that it was a Clanton descendant that actually made the fudge.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
And I remember, and I don't remember how it was brought up, but they said something about, those Earps are, had not good things to say.
No, they
basically.
did not.
So the consensus is kind of like the Earps were the bad guys and the Clantons were the good guys.
There's a lot of people that felt that.
Yes. So you have to imagine it, whatever's written is what makes the history.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. Were they just really trying to come in and take over the town and trying to get the money? And the people that had lived there for generations resented that?
I mean,
they were taking away their business, or who knows what was going on. I mean, we don't know. And I'm sure that, they had been in trouble before, so I'm sure they were breaking laws.
Sure.
But nobody had come down on them before, the way the Earps tried to just come in from nowhere and be like, this is mine.
Yeah, this is
You're
what
going
we're
to do
doing
what I say
from
now.
on.
And I think that's probably why they have that feeling. But
Sure.
it's still there today.
Oh, it absolutely
is. Which
is.
really kind of shocked me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there are large groups of people within that area that were not fans of the Earps. And I don't know if you're covering this or not, but they claimed an ambush the whole time.
Oh, yeah. They said they ambushed them. But if you go by, because the Clanton, which we'll get to this, but the Clantons, that family stuck around where the Earps eventually took off.
Yeah.
So they weren't there.
Right.
So would you pass down, to your family that we were all a bunch of criminals? Or would you say these out-of-towners came in and killed our family,
So we're just making fudge.
It could go either way,
Yeah.
right? But I just wanted to share that because I found it so interesting that in the early 2000s, they're still feeling that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the story. So on December 28th, 1881, Virgil was ambushed in the street and maimed in a murder attempt by the cowboys.
Yep.
Okay. On March 18th, 1882, a cowboy fired from a dark alley through the glass door of Campbell and Hatch's saloon and billiard parlor, killing Morgan.
Yep.
So the suspects in both of these things, they had alibis that were supplied by other cowboys, so they were never indicted because they couldn't be, But Wyatt Earp, he got newly appointed as the deputy U.S. Marshal in Cochise County, and he decided he was going to take matters into his own hands in his personal vendetta.
Yep.
He was pursued by the sheriff, Johnny Behan, who received a warrant from Tucson for Wyatt's killing of Frank Stillwell.
Mm-hmm. Stillwell was, who was he? He was one of the, obviously he was a sympathizer, but he was actually a cowboy.
Yeah, he was.
So I guess by about now you're asking us, so what the heck does this have to do with paranormal? Well, I'm glad you asked. So let's talk about the ghosts of the people involved in the gunfight of the OK Corral. Now, the first person I'm going to mention, Marshal Fred White. Now, he was shot by the cowboy faction leader Curly Bill, and he was shot on October 28th of 1880. So that was before the actual gunfight of the OK Corral. So they're connected in that sense. White was first marshal of Tombstone and had gained the respect of the cowboy the Clanton gang, and in fact had arrested cowboy members on several occasions, rarely having any problems when doing so. So they were somewhat sympathetic with him. He was a lawman, but he wasn't. I don't know. He was somewhat. They liked him, for lack of better words. I guess as much as a cowboy could like a cop, right? But in the early morning of October 28th, Curly Bill and several of his cohorts were making a sport by shooting up the town. And I think they were just shooting in the air, and he was just carrying on. But so Wyatt went to disarm the gunman, and he accidentally was shot. And he accidentally shot Wyatt, and he hit him in the groin. And, obviously being 1880, they didn't necessarily have 911, and, unfortunately probably bled out. But at any rate, it was thought he would make a full recovery. 2 days later, he died. And today he's said to haunt the street in front of the shooting site, which was an empty lot where the Birdcage Theater was built later, a year later. And that was the incident prior to it. And it's interesting. They show it in the movie, and it's a little... it's a little done up. He's an older man, and Curly Bill comes out there, and he points his guns at him and shoots him. And, he's upset about it. And Curly he seems genuinely actually upset, because he's like, oh, I'm sorry. He's probably really messed up because there was opium dens there, and the dude was probably hopped up on opium and shot him on accident. So that was the sad killing, and it's unfortunate. And he is buried at Boot Hill, and we've got some pictures that we'll put on the YouTubes or on the Facebooks. But it's pretty interesting, and yeah. So that's the first ghost we're talking about. And Nicole, do you want to take the next one?
So Virgil Earp, okay, at 11:30 p.m. on December 28th, 1881. He was ambushed as he walked from the Oriental Saloon to his room at the Cosmopolitan Hotel. The Sacramento Daily Record Union reported that he was fired upon with double-barreled shotguns loaded with buckshot by 3 men concealed in an unfinished building diagonally across on Allen Street. Virgil was hit in the back and left arm by 3 loads of buckshot from about 60 feet away. The Crystal Palace Saloon and the Eagle Brewery beyond Virgil were struck by 19 buckshot. 3 passed through the window, and 1 about a foot over the heads of some men standing by a faro table. But he said to his wife, "Never mind, I've got 1 arm left to hug you with." And him and his wife moved to his parents' home in Colton, California, to recover from his wounds, which took almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And then I think they moved, in different states across. But he died on October 19th, 1905. So he made it a while after that. He sure
did, yeah.
But what's interesting is people have seen like a man moving along the street in a long black frock coat.
Yep.
He's been seen on several occasions. He's crossing the road, and it's often seen near the site where Virgil was ambushed and shot. Mm-hmm. But the spirit, they call him the spirit, never makes it fully across the street. And that's what's led many to believe that this may be the ghost of Virgil Earp. Because that's kind of what happened. He never makes it. He never makes it.
Yep.
And that tells me that it's not actually like a haunting of Virgil Earp, but maybe a recorded energy.
Which residual is what
residual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where something traumatic has happened and something has held on to, and it's replaying.
Yeah, and what I find
he did make it out of Tombstone.
Yeah, he sure did. Yeah,
and I wouldn't come back.
No,
if I were him.
Yeah, and if you're ever there, they do have a lot of. They have times where everybody dresses in period and stuff like that. And I remember in accounting when I was a kid, somebody talked about when they were there for the El Dorado days, and they actually encountered a ghost like this. They assumed it was just somebody in period clothing, and it turned out that it was actually a ghost because they were doing something. I can't remember what it was. Oh, it was the carriage people. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
the drivers.
Yeah, the drivers. So guys, if you ever go there, there's a there's a carriage that goes up and down Allen Street, and the carriage drivers are really cool people, by the way. But that was the one that was telling us, like, he was getting ready to give somebody a ride, and he saw this person, and I guess he went down to put the stool where people get up to like help them up into the carriage, and when he looked back around, that guy vanished like right in front of his eyes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's just wild. So we've got Virgil Earp, we've got Fred White. What else do we have?
So I'm going to kind of focus on the people that actually died in the gunfight.
Yeah.
Which is Billy Clanton and Tom and Frank McLaury, who were brothers. At the OK Corral, where the gunfight happened, several people have reported seeing fading apparitions of men dressed in cowboy attire appearing with their guns drawn. Perhaps like in a gunfight.
Right.
So what's your brain immediately going to go to?
Yeah.
The gunfight of the OK Corral.
Sure.
And others have claimed to have felt numerous cold spots in various areas of the corral.
Yeah.
Which, if they're going to be anywhere in Tombstone, you would think.
Sure.
Because that was something that they were just maybe ambushed, possibly.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
I mean, and gunned down. And I know Billy Clanton, he was really young. He was only,
young.
what, like 18, 19? Something like that, I thought.
Yeah, he was young. I can't remember what his age was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the OK Corral's manager alleges that he saw the ghost of a tall, thin man in a flat-brimmed hat. And he thinks that it's a Virgil Earp.
Okay.
And some guests sometimes overhear the sounds of phantom horses because it was a corral.
Yeah.
That's where you keep horses, right?
Yep.
So I find that interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
That it could be Virgil, but they all kind of dress the same. So Billy Clanton specifically.
Yeah.
I find this interesting. Him and the McLaury boys are all buried together.
Yep.
At Boot Hill Cemetery.
They are.
Okay. So you can find them, and they've got their, tombstones, basically. But he is seen rising from his grave at the cemetery and walking along the road of Highway 80 south to Tombstone. So like I said before, Highway 80 is what you use to come into the town. Boot Hill is right there on your left-hand side. And there's like a gas station. Mm-hmm. And then you hit Tombstone. Yep. So he's seen leaving there and walking down that road to go back to town. It basically
turns into Fremont.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Which, that would be frightening to see.
It would be very frightening to see that. Mm-hmm. I think that if you've never been there, it's Tombstone. So it's not like, this huge city. It's still a very small town. But if you're driving in there and you see Boot Hill, it'll be off. If you're coming from Tucson, I should say. Boot Hill Cemetery is going to be to your left. And then, like Nicole said, just very quickly after that will be this gas station, which, by the way, if you have to use the bathroom, I don't recommend there.
No.
But, yeah, and you pass that and you kind of just show up into Tombstone. So to see something like that, probably dressed the way he would have dressed in period, that'll stand out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not like if it was on Allen Street, okay, you may give it a second look, but then you think, well, that's just somebody dressed up in period costume.
There is so much more.
Yes, there is.
Concerning Tombstone Paranormal that there's no way we could fit it all in.
Not a chance.
Or you guys would be sitting here for hours. So we've decided we're going to break that up in future podcasts. Yep. And talk about different, and the birdcage will probably be one by itself.
Oh, guaranteed. Yeah, I mean, there's so much there. Yeah.
But basically, it was a saloon mixed with a dance hall with a prostitution thing. I mean, it was all of that, okay?
Yep.
So this is where this sighting has happened, okay? Mm-hmm. So apparently they had a statue of Wyatt Earp, like either a wax figure or something like that, okay? Yeah. That they made, and they placed it in one of the cribs overlooking the theater. So a crib is like a box seat, basically.
Yep.
They just call it a crib because it does kind of look like that, the way it was designed, you know. Mm-hmm. So when it was first put in there, the staff would arrive in the morning and find Wyatt's hat continually knocked off and thrown into the floor below. It kept happening over and over and over for about 6 months. And then one time they came in and they found that the statue had been turned around with its back facing the view from below.
Interesting.
So sometime later, a local historian told the owners that they had placed the Wyatt Earp statue in the crib that was usually reserved by the Clantons.
Uh-oh. Boy, that's talk about a faux pas.
Yeah. So they decided to move it to the crib that I guess Wyatt actually sat in all the time, frequently.
Yep.
And the hat tossing finally stopped.
Imagine that. I didn't know that. That's wild. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean...
You think that they do more than just knock its hat off. But.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't throw it on the floor.
But I found that really interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Mm-hmm. That's definitely not residual.
No. That's
very active.
Intelligent. And, I mean, we'll get to the birdcage later, but that is an interesting place.
Yeah, like Nicole said, the bird cage has got no shortage of incidences and paranormal stuff going on. We'll definitely cover that. But, no, I did not know that about the bird cage.
Yeah. And so I tried to find something on Morgan Earp because I feel his is one of the saddest, I think.
Yeah.
He was young. He was like young. 30. Mm-hmm. Okay. On March 18th, 1882, he got killed. He was playing pool, basically, billiards. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the gunshot came through the front in the building, and it struck him in the right side of his abdomen and severed his spinal column.
God.
And it basically knocked him down on the billiard table.
Right.
And he bled to death in Campbell and Hatch's Billiards on Allen Street, which is now the building that it's in is called the Red Buffalo Trading Company that we've been into multiple times.
Yeah.
It's a store.
Yeah, it's a great store.
Yeah. And that's the thing with Tombstone is all these buildings are original. I mean, they had several fires and they had to rebuild them and stuff. I know that. But, I mean, these are the places where these people were. That's what's so cool about it.
Yeah.
Is, I mean, you're walking where they walked. You're in the buildings where they were. And you can just feel the history around you.
Yeah. And there's an energy to it.
There is an energy. And, you know, with that, because it's old, you smell the, I guess... how do you smell the oldness, basically?
The must?
It's a musty smell, but you can smell just that the walls are old, that the ceilings are old, the floors are old, you know? And they creak when you walk on them and that whole thing.
Yep.
But a lot of these places have, you know, they've got new signs because they're stores or they're this or they're that, and you don't know exactly where you're at or what happened in the building that you're in. Now, some of them, like I think this one, they've got it etched in the glass that this was...
Yeah.
The Campbell and Hatch's Billiards, okay? But if you don't know the history of Tombstone or what happened, you're not going to know that that's where Morgan Earp died.
Or, the significance behind that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, the employees of the store, they say that they think this is Morgan Earp. Now, could it be someone else, of course?
Well, sure, yeah.
But they think that he watches over the store when they're not there. And one employee said that they were unable to finish stocking the shelves before the store closed. And they came back in the morning and the box had been half full when they left the night before, and the box was empty. And the shelves had been stacked, like with the contents of the box, but hadn't been shelved correctly, like where it was facing front.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.